back with another episode of All Hands on Tech. I'm your host, Claire Quirion. Today we're joined by Amanda Richardson, Growth Manager of Kindred AI. Kindred AI is building a product that uses machine intelligence to help employees proactively grow and cultivate EQ. Their mission is to deliver social and emotional skills at scale and to redefine the way emotional intelligence is measured, taught, and practiced at work. Let's dive in. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm so happy to be here as well. I was joking with the team at Unbound here that I see so many of these videos where they do the virtual interviews, like specifically the Travis and Jason Kelsey one. So I feel like I'm embodying that right now.
Nice.
Hopefully we get just as many views as those guys.
Let's
we're
do
gonna
it.
manifest that. So we're gonna start with some icebreakers to kind of get into the groove of this thing.
Yeah.
And I think this one is a really nice one. And I'm going to ask you if there's something small that you've done recently that's brought you joy or peace.
Well, I mean, I suppose the thing was rather large in that I recently took my kids, actually this past weekend, to a Toronto FC game. They're both big soccer players. But the moment of unlocking like a core memory when you can see that on your kids' faces is like priceless.
That's amazing.
So that was a very just a very cool moment to like be in and be present in. So yeah.
That's awesome. Did you go? So you went for the long weekend?
We did. And I'll even piggyback on that because there was a ton of traffic. That also meant that we also just had like tons of conversation and shared music and stuff like that, right?
Nice.
That just pulls you back into the moment. And that's important, particularly these days. So
I love that. That's great. If you could instantly master one skill that would make your daily work easier, what would it be?
I would say in my position, my days are very like shifting priorities, back-to-back conversations, and different projects, even different organizations, all the things. So constantly switching. So being able to truly master like effortless focus when you're under pressure, and make right when you're pulled in 100 directions, and focus isn't always about like just productivity. It's about being present and actually showing up in those conversations. So just like staying very centered when the pressure is on, to make really good choices and listen and kind of show up the way that people need you to. So I'd say that's, focus is just it's a huge one. I think it resonates probably with a ton of people, but like,
Oh yeah.
How do you do it? So that's the one that I'm just constantly working away at, kind of mastering that. Yeah.
I think yes, I feel that at work, but even in life, there's so many things that a lot of stimulation at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like those micro moments of awareness under pressure are kind of like the things that I try to look for now, to be like, center yourself, reminding yourself that you can do these things and that kind of stuff. And I
love that. It's a good one. So obviously you talk a lot about EQ, mental health, all that, in your day to day at Kindred AI. So and then obviously kind of with the oxymoron of AI, a lot of the misconceptions perhaps or assumptions about AI and being non-human in a way. So what's a human trait that you think technology can't replace?
Well, I would say definitely like sitting at that is the intersection of like EQ and AI is a really unique place to kind of sit in, but we know that tech will never replicate love, empathy, intuition. Like these things are so deeply human traits that they are, they're born from our lived experiences, our mistakes, our joys, even our pain, those types of things, right? Empathy, for example, isn't just recognizing an emotion. It is feeling it alongside someone, and choosing to respond with care. And that choice is uniquely human. So those types of things, like tech can definitely support us. It's going to help us to surface patterns, highlight, blind spots, or, lighten the load for us. But what it's not going to do is interpret it, and it doesn't choose, that's the part that only we as humans can do, like when it comes to,
Right.
those emotions. So, and that's at the heart of what we've been really intentional about building with Kindred, and even kind of the products that platforms we're supporting to build as well. That it's not going to replace things like therapists or, leaders. Instead, it just creates more space for love, more empathy, more intuition to kind of shine through. Because that's at the core of what we want to do, is that human connection and build that and like amplify it, right, with AI. So
Kindred AI takes a really unique approach to emotional intelligence, leadership, and combining it with AI. So can you just, to start us off, tell us a little bit more about Kindred and how it started and kind of what you guys are focusing on?
Yeah, definitely. So the Kindred AI was born essentially amongst kind of the middle of the Great Resignation. We saw this really significant time when people weren't just leaving, for better pay. They were walking away from toxic cultures. Our co-founders, Blair Ryan and Tracy Dwyer, they recognized that, right? At the heart of so much workplace dissatisfaction was this real lack of emotional intelligence. And rather than forcing, this company into existence, the two of them really leaned on their backgrounds in EQ, and assessment building. And the one kind of guiding question was, what if and how can we use emotional intelligence to actually make work less toxic, and not even just work, but like life too, because let's be real, like this trickles out to, this impacts your entire, your life, your EQ does. So, the first kind of, the main product of Kindred being, an EQ assessment, unlike many others, kind of that long, tedious, might take, an hour or two or days, depending on what's kind of set up to kind of develop that EQ and find, give the background to it. This is a quick, accessible, and actionable, output from this EQ assessment that we've developed. So, it quickly gained traction. Amazon became an early adopter, and that really validated, the approach that has really set the stage for what Kindred is and what Kindred is becoming. So that's very exciting. And in terms of AI advancing, so has our vision. Kindred has, evolved from a single assessment into a platform where we're also like embedding emotional intelligence AI, into healthcare apps like MedChefs, leadership companies using that, development at scale, and working with some of the world's best thought leaders, which is really exciting, to reimagine how we can train folks around and scale it without always necessarily needing a facilitator in the room either. And how do we do this, right? How do we get it out to people, meaningfully, and, really just get it out into the world. So I think one of the things that makes Kindred kind of, unique is just how it's grown very organically in that state, but there's also just an urgent need for healthier, more emotionally intelligent workplaces. And today we're helping, entire organizations, not just leaders, develop EQ. And, it's measurable, it's repeatable, it's scalable. Unlike IQ, EQ is something that we can grow. So it's not, it's something that we should and we need to really lean into. So it's very exciting, and Kindred is still very much rooted in, the belief that Blair and Tracy started with, and that was, that emotional intelligence, when it's paired with tech, it can be this really quiet revolution that completely transforms the way that we work and live. So that's awesome. Really cool.
You said something really interesting there about how it's being applied across organizations. I think typically, these types of assessments and training is just at the leadership level, which is really limiting. So how is Kindred AI, how are you able to make it more accessible and at a larger scale?
Yeah. Definitely. It's been traditionally very reserved, right, for executives. And it's often, the long workshops or coaching sessions, that they don't always necessarily filter down. And we've kind of flipped that model, and every employee, not just leaders, can take a really quick, and I mean 5 minutes, quick assessment that is then accessible across an entire organization, that, they get those personalized, and it's instant insights around their current EQ, along with, which is really cool, is like those next practical steps. So there's an AI co-pilot. So it's kind of like a coach in your pocket that is guiding you, and it's there to, add to your day-to-day, to context, reflections, prompts, whatever might be needed there. But like that underlying difference, right, is like that AI is emotionally intelligent. And I think like that's important to kind of remember, is like the difference here is that it's built with 30 plus years of really the very best EQ research that is out there. So it is one of a kind AI. So it's very kind of exciting to see it being rolled out in that way. I think the real impact when it comes to EQ is it stops being exclusive to leadership, and it starts becoming like part of shared language across an organization, right? So it's not just at the top level that everybody's talking about, the empathy from one to another, how are people managing their stress, those types of things. Teams are going to communicate better. There's no question about it. When you have people who understand how they work together as, team emotional intelligence, even as well as like your individual emotional intelligence. So, leaders, coaches, they're all going to communicate more effectively. And then people just generally feel more engaged because they have this role, where they feel seen and heard and valued, which is, as a human, that's really, really important, to be able to see those things. So just being able to scale it so quickly, and it's so meaningful and so impactful. And that's why that accessible piece has been, so important to this mission.
That's great. And it's great to hear that people recognize the issue and, have organically gotten on board. Obviously, a lot of credit to the team at Kindred AI and the technology that you've built. But what are some of the challenges that you've come up against when trying to scale this emotional intelligence through technology? Are there some barriers that you hit?
Yeah, naturally. There's a pushback on AI. But the biggest challenge is kind of just keeping the human at the center of this. EQ is relational. It's about trust, and it's about empathy, and it's about how people show up for each other. So when you introduce tech, there's always a risk that it becomes too, transactional, or it feels like a score rather than it being part of a growth journey, which it very much is. Organizational readiness, leaders that maybe they just want a quick fix. Now, like I said, this is quick, and so that hopefully will help there. But they want a quick fix, but it comes from awareness and action and applying these things when it comes down to the bottom of it. So it takes reflection, and it takes consistency, and it takes courage to show up and be, a vulnerable leader, and somebody who shows up and gives people the space to do the same. So there's that, that real kind of at the core of an organization. Are they ready to embody that? So that's kind of part of, the challenge. And of course, just the general, like I said, AI, but like the fear of unknown. For some people, the idea of even taking an EQ assessment can feel really intimidating. And I get it, right? What if it reveals something that I don't like about myself? Or part of our work is making that process safe for people and supportive and framed as growth, that it's not for judgment, right? And that we're here, tech for good. We're, AI for good. So scaling, isn't just about being this powerful AI. It's about, designing in ways that protects psychological safety, and it honors people's choice, and it helps people, ultimately feel seen and not exposed, right? Just feel seen and heard for what they've, shared, as opposed to
Right.
being exposed on kind of that scale of things.
Right. Or ranked against other people
Exactly.
or, yeah.
Yes, this is about your individual journey. Where are you at? Like, it's presented in that way to find out, because we haven't done this. We just haven't. So let's do this now. And it's, it doesn't matter what age, in terms of organizationally, we can grow all of these skills. So, yeah.
That's great. How have you seen AI improve some of the self-awareness or team performance? Do you have some examples where you've seen a big impact?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it with both Kindred, Waiting Room being another platform that we power, and it is creating space for people to be more present and more self-aware. So in therapy, for example, clinicians are often, juggling with note taking and admin and trying to stay fully present with, their clients. And these are really important people that, working on their mental health, which is amazing. Waiting Room's AI, can capture and organize insights, in the background, so that therapist doesn't lose, subtle cues in the moment. That really frees them up to be focused, and their clients ultimately feel really deeply heard. So that's, one example with Kindred. It's about kind of like reflection at scale. So the EQ assessments, and the AI co-pilots, they give that immediate feedback, about someone's emotional intelligence. So they provide, that practical nudge for growth that kind of says, what are your 3 top areas, your strengths? What are they? Let's ID them. You need to know, lean into those things.
Yeah, totally.
And also, what are your areas for growth? What are those, I don't like to call them the bottom, but what are your areas for growth? What are those 3 that we can ID based on this assessment? And these things are so meaningful, to see kind of that, growth over time. Because they'll reassess, and be able to, actually see their growth. And the impact is wild. We're sitting at just under 10% over 90 days. That's that makes my heart just burst, knowing that this is the impact, and we're seeing it is measurable. So we know, it's that we can scale this now across, hundreds of thousands of folks,
That's incredible.
quickly. So yeah,
that's amazing. And I think the conversation around EQ and mental health and all that kind of stuff can be kind of hard to grasp for a lot of people. So the fact that you're able to actually track it and track improvements, I think is super encouraging for people. And hopefully takes away some of the stigma or the fear around, maybe discovering an area for improvement. It's okay, well, we're going to work on that. We're identifying this as something that we're going to work towards. And it's not oh, you're not good at this and that's the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're in a space right now where there are kind of voluntary, it's not mandated, but I'm lost for a word here, where Canadian Mental Health is saying you need to, you should be able to, how are you providing and that psychological safety and right in an organization, how are you measuring it? It's not it's not mandatory. It's coming. And that's going to be a now challenge for organizations across the country. What's that going to look like for them? And where can they find, which is, we have this data that can, show where folks are at and where, their growth and the ability that it has to help people grow their EQ. So that's important, and will be.
Absolutely. And I think having those more regular, a more linear, regular approach to it, maybe that's not the right word, but I find sometimes in more kind of the traditional style of this type of training, it's you have a consultant come in and you do that maybe twice a year. getting
Yeah.
these big gaps between those conversations, and then you bring it up again. So I think, as a program like Kindred AI or Waiting Room or whatever it may be, it just makes it a more regular conversation that people are having and are working towards.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, that just kind of touches like the co-pilot, right? Being able to go in there and have a conversation. I always like to use the example of like, I want to raise. How do I go about that conversation? Like with emotional intelligence backed, and just questions like that people can come in and ask. It also kind of removes a bit of that buffer, when you want to be able to ask questions about yourself like this, but in this way that that you're getting, very highly emotionally intelligent, that co-pilot is speaking back to you in a way that like it is trained.
Right.
There's safety there, there's research there. So you can have a really, really strong, powerful conversation and kind of get the answers that, hopefully get you to, that next kind of that growth that we want people to see. So
I think that's great. It gives people the confidence and to be able to advocate for themselves and have those types of conversations, which are scary for anyone, the first time you do it, even maybe the 10th time you do it. So,
it's funny. You just mentioned the confidence thing, and I've seen kind of both sides of that where people will do their assessment and, maybe they're shocked, but they maybe also, they've been super honest, and that's really important, is to go through that assessment with real honesty about like, how are you showing up, and your ability to identify people's emotions, all those things. So it's always interesting when you get folks who they were surprised to see what their feedback came in, maybe so much higher, so they weren't even giving themselves credit. So it's like, it has that power to like help them see no, you're a fantastic leader, like own it. I've had some really cool conversations around that with folks, just doing like EQ, coaching with them. But just like showing them and highlighting to people, like, these are your strengths, lean into those. And that's a cool thing to kind of be a part of and see people, tap into.
That is really cool. And there's a lot of conversation around imposter syndrome and that kind of thing. So I think this shines light and hopefully
helps.
Yeah, helps that.
Yeah, definitely. That's
very cool. So in a platform where people are being so vulnerable, ideally being vulnerable. How do you kind of approach the conversations around privacy and control when you talk about AI? Those are big concerns. So how do you make people feel genuinely safe using your technology?
I think it comes down to kind of like three things: being transparent, consent, and control, essentially. So first, people definitely need to know exactly what data is being collected and how it's being used. I feel like most people, that's normal, that like we have that, like we want that standard, and we should, because it provides you with like, it gives you that ease of knowing how it's collected, what's being collected. There's no fine print, plain language, like makes it very clear to understand, is really important. So that's part of that safety, transparency, right? That psych safety, we have to create that. The second, the need to like, choose to participate. So you're not being forced, but choose it, right? You're choosing that growth. You're choosing to, learn, which is cool, about yourself. So that kind of consent, and even the consent on like other platforms too, just, opting in and understanding again with that really clear language. And the last one, when we kind of designed the AI with those principles, it shifts that entire experience, right? From surveillance, so the control, to empowering people. So instead of feeling like something is being done to them, people should feel like that AI is really working for them. And that's when that trust kind of is built. So always at the top of our mind, right, is how do we keep this so transparent that, it creates psychological safety. We give, the consent is in their hands. They have the control, those types of things. So those are those are always at the height. Obviously, data protection, that's really number one. We have to keep that at the height of everything because we want them to be safe and feel safe with us.
Yeah. So looking ahead, how do you see AI and EQ, that blend, reshaping leadership and workplace culture?
Yeah. So I think AI and EQ, we're going to see, a shift in leadership about like managing tasks and being able to coach people. AI can really kind of resurface real-time patterns, like where trust is building and where engagement is slipping and where burnout signals are showing up. Is your organization low in self-management? There's a sign. We can look at the data. It will show and like that's from an organizational standpoint, like that's exciting, and there's actionable things to really like take away from that. And that's going to give leaders a mirror that they've never had before. So that's really cool. The cultural impact will be huge when emotional intelligence becomes measurable and accessible to everybody, not just the executives, but also still important, right? The leaders also need that. I'm not, won't take away from that, but let's also it needs to be, like I said, that shared language across that entire organization. And then leaders get to start to respond proactively instead of reactively, which will, that in turn should help in the long run. And then teams get, we start to actually address emotional well-being in an organization rather than it being like an afterthought. And that's, over time, that blend of EQ and AI has that power to really normalize things like empathy and trust and psychological safety as a foundation of their culture. I guess rather than it being like the exception to it.
Right.
So there's, it's going to do and have the ability to do a ton of things to really blend that in the long run. So it's exciting, and we're just getting started. So
I like that. I like the term you use, kind of AI, kind of acting as a mirror to identify blind spots. Because I think that validates that it's not making things up. It's kind of taking what you're putting in and helping you see it in a new way. And how to use that. Yeah.
And that's, leaders want those insights to like, what are the, like, so if AI can help you spot those, like, wonderful, right? We have, 360 feedback that shows teams, anonymized data, but, like feedback like that really can surface, blind spots that they won't or may not ever, know about or see about. But like I said, there's this kind of beautiful buffer of like kind of feeling safe to be able to say what you want to say, in terms of like work in the organization and the folks you work with, those types of things. And you can get your point across and feel seen and heard, and know that, it becomes anonymized. So you're not feeling put on the spot and the pressure, but then it gets to become, it gets surfaced, which is, that's part awareness is, that's an action that is, people we look for, and I think we think about like taking action and like doing the things, and I've got to, the productivity, but awareness is an action. And I think we forget that. So this is like step one, like awareness, like, do you know, like like where you are with your EQ? So it's such a huge, incredible first step for people to take, to go, okay, like now I have a starting point. So I can actually start to develop on this EQ journey. Kind of like, you've got your fitness journey, but like this is your emotional health journey. And we all have that. So it's definitely going to be, and it is already like that. It's a mirror that we've needed. Which is exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It is very exciting. So is there something in particular, kind of looking to the future of this space, that excites you the most?
I think I think the most yeah, I think overall the thing for me is accessibility. The fact that we have this platform and product that we can scale this and we can get it into the hands of a lot of people. It's something, we've said this, executives, it's been part of training for a long time, but now that we can do this and scale it with personalized insights for everybody across an entire organization, that gets me up in the morning. It's a
Yeah.
really powerful mission to be a part of. And I like it has, and we have this fundamentally, potential here that we are reshaping how organizations, how they work and how people experience their jobs. Like we spend, is it a third of our lives, a third of our lives at work?
Yeah.
It's important. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. So I think that's, I guess the flip side is, of course, like, what keeps me up is that we grow responsibly, and that, we're working in emotional spaces. We're working in privacy and ethics and things like inclusivity. These aren't optional. These are, the foundation of what, we're building. So while I say accessibility, I also, mean that we also keep it very responsible in terms of like accessible. So the challenge is really for us right now is that, we're moving fast enough to meet the demand, because the demand is there. There's no kind of question on it, but carefully enough that we protect, people who are at the center of it, and that we keep our AI, ethical and inclusive and private and safe.
I think, yeah. I mean, that is a challenge of when you're moving quick. It's you want to do things right. So I think it's great to hear that that's top of mind, because I can imagine that a lot of companies deal with that same that same battle. And I also, when you think about the accessibility part in allowing people at all levels of an organization to engage in this type of training, I think just naturally that's going to improve people's experiences at work, because I think opportunity for growth and education is huge. I mean, not for everyone, but for many people, that's a really big factor in how content they are at their job. So it's kind of a funny idea that you only train people at the top. Because the people below them are eventually going to be there, and they're going to be maybe unequipped when they get there, or maybe they won't get the promotion because they never got the training to get them there. So I think this is a really holistic way of looking at the health of an organization and giving people equal opportunities.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. It's the impact is going to be far and wide.
Totally.
And we've started, and we're already seeing it. We can see it in the data. And that's, as I say, like, it feels like gold to be able to, work with HR leaders and, CEOs, people in culture, learning and development leaders, kind of wherever we're meeting those folks in terms of like organizations. But to be able to already kind of be able to hand them those insights and say, like, we can do this. And, it's a simple process in terms of doing so. So it's just, like I said, the accessible bit, and like being able to be a part of a ripple effect. That's always been a big one for me, is like, how can I kind of share out any knowledge, and, today using voice to, like, we talk about EQ and getting it out there. But the ripple effect is, it's exciting to see what it's doing and how it's helping people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This has been a really, I would say, insightful conversation. I mean, we have as much as it's a very technical product in a range of products, it's the emotional side should be talked about more. And so I'm really appreciative of your time and coming on here and shining light on that side of the world.
Amazing. Yeah, no, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about Kindred. So, yeah, really great to chat with you, Claire. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. We'll talk to you next time.